Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we sift through the noise, stack up the insights, and really try to help you cut through to what truly matters.
It's great to be diving in again.
Today, we're embarking on I think, deeply fascinating exploration. It's about the stories our brains tell us, particularly those powerful narratives we weave about our vices or challenges, sometimes even mistaking them for friends or essential, maybe indispensable parts of ourselves. We're calling this deep dive The Man Who Mistook His Vice for a Friend.
It's a profound subject, certainly. It really touches on the very core of identity and perception, and it stems directly from the groundbreaking work of pioneering neurologists and psychologists, people like Oliver Sacks, of course, but many others too.
Right.
And our mission today, really, is to help you understand precisely how these potent internal narratives take hold, inside your own mind.
How they actually work.
Exactly. How they subtly yet profoundly shape your reality. And I think most importantly, how you can begin to observe your own mind's tricks, but with a sense of genuine curiosity and profound compassion.
Not judgment.
No, absolutely not judgment. This process, we believe, it's the crucial first step. It allows you to consciously start crafting a truer, healthier, and ultimately a more authentic story for yourself.
And to guide us on this journey, we've dived deep into a rich and diverse stack of sources. Quite a lot, actually. We'll be drawing insights from the deeply human and clinical tales of Oliver Sacks, exploring foundational theories like cognitive dissonance and behavioral science, and also tapping into the wisdom of personal growth and recovery.
A real mix.
Yeah. So prepare to turn your gaze inward, because by the end of this deep dive, you'll undoubtedly have a clearer lens, a way to understand and, crucially, to influence your own ongoing narrative.
Okay, so when we start talking about how our brains construct reality, how we piece together our sense of self and the world around us, well, it's truly impossible not to start with the extraordinary work of Oliver Sacks.
He's foundational, isn't he?
Absolutely. He was in so many ways unique in his approach. He famously advocated for what he termed a personalistic or even a romantic science.
Romantic science.
Yeah.
What did he mean by that exactly?
Well, what he meant was that Sacks wasn't merely interested in the purely physiological or neurological deficits his patients presented. He wasn't just observing symptoms like a checklist.
Right, not just the what's broken.
Precisely. Instead, he delved deeply into how these conditions profoundly affected the self, the very essence of a person's identity, their unique lived experience, their subjective inner world. He sought to understand the whole individual, not just their broken parts or their medical charts.
That's a really powerful distinction, because it's almost like he saw the brain not just as a machine, or some complex computer processing data, but as an enchanted loom. That was his phrase, right?
Yeah.
Constantly and tirelessly weaving these intricate patterns of meaning.
Yes, exactly. The enchanted loom. He believed there was a significant chasm, as he put it, between purely computational views of the brain, which, he acknowledged are correct in their own way, describing the brain as a machine.
Sure, they have their place.
They do. But a chasm between that and the richly vivid, dramatic, and often musical quality of human experience, he really wanted to understand that personal dimension, that unique and deeply intimate narrative each brain creates.
It sounds like he felt something was missing in the standard approach.
He did. He felt strongly that much of contemporary cognitive neurology and psychology often suffered from a kind of intellectual agnosia.
Agnosia. That's the inability to recognize things, right?
Yeah.
Even if you can see them.
Exactly. The inability to interpret sensations. He believed these fields, much like some of his patients, were sometimes failing to see the comic, the real, the deeply personal aspects of human suffering and adaptation. They were missing the person.
Wow.
And this emphasis on the personal, on the story of the individual, is precisely what makes his numerous case studies so incredibly illuminating. They aren't simply clinical observations or dry medical records.
No, they read like stories. Deeply human stories.
They are profound, often poignant stories of human beings grappling with monumental changes in their perception, their identity, their connection to reality. They showcase the remarkable, sometimes frankly unsettling, ways their brains respond and adapt.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these cases. Because they really do open a window into our own internal workings, don't they?
They absolutely do.
First up, probably his most famous, Dr. P. The man who mistook his wife for a hat.
A classic.
He was a brilliant musician, but he had this severe condition, visual agnosia.
Right. Couldn't recognize objects by sight.
Exactly. Lost his ability to visually recognize objects, even faces. Yet, astonishingly, he could still navigate and function in the world. How? By interpreting it through music and movement.
It's incredible.
Sachs observed that his identity was so profoundly intertwined with music that he almost had a body music, like if his inner music stopped, if the rhythm faltered.
He just stopped too.
He became utterly confused and immobile, couldn't make sense of his surroundings at all. For him, music became his primary way of apprehending reality and really his very self. Sachs mentioned he wouldn't recognize his students by looking at their faces.
No. How then?
By their unique movements, their body music as they entered the room.
Wow. That case profoundly illustrates how the brain compensates, doesn't it? Not just by finding a practical workaround like using a cane or something.
Yeah, it's deeper.
Much deeper, it actively constructs an entirely alternative reality, a deeply personal story of the world when a primary mode of perception fails. When one sensory input pathway is lost, the mind brilliantly finds another, often highly personal way to make sense of things and maintain a coherent sense of identity.
So our sense of self isn't fixed.
Not at all. It suggests that our self isn't this fixed, immutable thing, but rather something incredibly dynamic. It can be repatterned, reorganized around an entirely new, often unusual organizing principle. For Dr. P, music provided that intricate framework, allowing him to navigate a world that would otherwise have been just chaos.
Okay, and here's where we can maybe draw a parallel to our deep dive topic.
Yes, I think so. Imagine if instead of music or movement, a deeply ingrained habit, maybe even a destructive vice, became that core organizing principle for someone's reality.
The thing that structures their world.
Exactly. How might that distort self-perception? Much like Dr. P's visual agnosia distorted his view of, well, hats and faces. Could it make the vice feel indispensable, the very lens through which you understand who you are?
That's a chilling thought, but it makes a strange kind of sense. Okay, building on that, let's talk about Christina, the disembodied woman.
Another incredibly powerful case.
She experienced a profound loss of proprioception. That's our fundamental sense of body position, right? Knowing where your limbs are without looking.
Our inner GPS for the body, essentially. She lost it.
Completely. And this left her feeling truly bodiless, unreal, unpossessed. Sachs writes she felt like she lived behind a horrible dead veil.
Just disconnected from her physical self.
Yeah. She could still function physically, but it took immense conscious effort, sheer force of will, relying heavily on visual cues. But crucially, Sachs noted, she didn't feel herself inhabiting her body. She succeeded in operating.
But not in being. That's such a key distinction.
It really is.
Christina's experience dramatically highlights the deep foundational connection between our sense of self and our physical being. When that fundamental sensory input proprioception is lost, the internal narrative of being itself becomes profoundly fractured.
The story breaks down.
It does. Her body was no longer this intimate possession, an extension of herself. It became a channel of vulnerability, alien, separate. It's a vivid example of how our internal story of self isn't purely mental or abstract. It's deeply embodied.
And again, for our purposes today, thinking about addiction.
Yes, it raises the question, can a vice or an addiction, by maybe disconnecting us from our authentic physical and emotional sensations, create a similar kind of disembodiment?
Like numbing out.
Exactly. Could it make us feel as if we are merely operating, just going through the motions, but not truly being our authentic selves, living behind a kind of dead veil of our own making constructed by the habit?
It certainly makes you think about how we can lose touch with our own bodies, our own feelings, when we rely too heavily on external coping mechanisms. Okay, next case, Witty T.C. Ray, a man with severe Tourette's syndrome.
Ah, yes, Ray.
He jokingly, but Sachs felt profoundly, stated, "I consist of TCs, there is nothing else."
Quite a statement.
His identity was so deeply intertwined with his tics, his PC witticisms, his compulsive gestures, that he claimed he couldn't imagine life without them. He wasn't even sure he would care for life without them.
He feared losing himself if he lost the tics.
Yeah, he genuinely worried if the tics went away, what would be left of him?
This case offers such a direct, incredibly striking parallel to our episode's focus, doesn't it?
It really does.
How someone can come to see a challenging condition or indeed a vice or an addiction, not as something separate from them, but as a core, indispensable, even defining part of their identity.
This is just who I am.
Exactly that narrative. It's a narrative of self-definition that can become, as the writer Ernest Becker might suggest, a kind of conditioned prison.
A prison we build ourselves.
In a way, yes. In this prison, one's familiar defenses or problematic behaviors, however uncomfortable they might be, actually start to feel safer than the terrifying unknown of a life without them. Ray's words echo the fear so many people experience when contemplating letting go of a vice they've come to identify with. They ask genuinely, who would I be without it?
A profound and scary question. And then there's the tragic figure of William, a patient with Korsakoff's psychosis.
Ah, William, it's a difficult case.
He had this incredible, almost prodigious gift for confabulation, which is...
Confabulation is the spontaneous production of false or distorted memories. But crucially, without the conscious intention to deceive, it's the brain filling in gaps.
Right. So William would fabricate these elaborate stories effortlessly to fill the huge memory gaps his condition created.
Right.
But this gift, Sachs wrote, tragically became his damnation.
How so?
It led to unending verbosity, a constant stream of talk, and a deceiving surface of illusions. This ultimately created an ultimate barrier to any meaning. Sachs described him as de-souled.
De-souled. That's powerful.
His true feelings, his real connections, were just replaced by this endless, ultimately meaningless narrative. It left him devoid of an authentic self.
William's case really shows the extreme, tragic consequence of constructing a fictional narrative that, rather than helping the individual cope, actually prevents genuine engagement with reality and with a deeper, authentic self.
It becomes a wall.
A complete wall. It underscores the profound danger of clinging to illusions, however comforting or fluent they might seem initially. It shows how such narratives can entirely replace deeper, authentic feeling and connection, leaving a person feeling empty at their core, even if they seem functional on the surface.
It's a powerful cautionary tale, isn't it? About the mind's ability to deceive itself, even to its own ultimate detriment.
Absolutely. And for someone caught in the grip of a vice, the constant confabulation, the justifications, the rationalizations, the promises to self that are never kept.
Tomorrow will stop.
Exactly. That can become their own unending verbosity, preventing them from ever truly seeing or addressing the real problems, the real pain beneath the surface narrative.
That really drives home the deceptive power of these internal stories we build. Okay, another case. Rebecca, a woman with intellectual disabilities. She gave us another deeply powerful metaphor for the self.
The living carpet.
Yes. She described herself as a sort of living carpet. She articulated this desperate need for a pattern, a design, to avoid feeling like she would literally unravel.
A need for structure.
Deeply. Music, she found, helped her movements and literally composed her, as Sachs put it. It gave her life a vital sense of organic, aesthetic, and dramatic unity. She desperately needed meaning, a coherent structure for her experience, a design to hold herself together.
That metaphor is so powerful because it speaks directly to our universal human need for coherence and meaning in our lives. Our self-concept, as the cognitive psychologist Howard Gardner suggests, is essentially an account of himself, an ongoing story that we continually edit and refine throughout our lives.
We're always editing our story.
Constantly. And if that account lacks a coherent design, if the brain's enchanted loom stops weaving meaningful patterns, we feel lost, we feel fragmented. And indeed, as Rebecca put it so beautifully, we feel like we might unravel.
It underscores that we're not just passive recipients of reality.
Not at all. We are active constructors of our own meaning and self-narrative. And thinking about our theme, in the context of a vice, that necessary pattern can sometimes be perceived as the vice itself.
How do you mean?
Well, the predictable routine of the habit, the temporary escape it offers, the false sense of control it might provide. However damaging it is, it can provide a perverse form of unity, a flawed pattern that nonetheless keeps the living carpet from feeling like it's completely fraying at the edges.
It's a destructive pattern, but it is a pattern.
Exactly. And sometimes any pattern feels better than none.
Okay, and one more case, the famous autistic twins.
Ah, the calendar calculator.
Yes, who saw numbers not as abstract symbols, but as individual friends.
Real entities to them.
Yeah. They had this direct, intuitive cognition of a universe and heaven of numbers that provided them with immense self-sufficiency and serenity. For them, these numbers had personalities, relationships. They offered companionship and a structured, predictable world.
This highlights the remarkable capacity of the human mind to find meaning and companionship in truly unexpected places, even constructing deeply personal worlds that are entirely internal.
It shows how stories can be deeply idiosyncratic, deeply personal.
And provide immense personal value, offering a profound form of connection and order, even when external social connections might be challenging or confusing for the individual. These twins found solace and order in numbers.
So, drawing the parallel again.
Similarly, someone might construct a world where their vice becomes their friend, offering a distorted sense of companionship, predictability, a private source of comfort, even if that friendship is ultimately destructive.
It fills a void, but in a harmful way.
Precisely. These cases, however unusual or extreme they might seem, offer a profound window into your own mind, into all our minds.
They really do.
They demonstrate that yourself is not a static, fixed entity. It's an incredibly dynamic, fluid, and often constructed narrative. Understanding this plasticity, this capacity for your brain to weave stories, sometimes helpful, sometimes not, is the first crucial step to being able to influence it.
Okay, so if our brains are these natural, ceaseless storytellers, constantly weaving narratives to make sense of the world, whether it's through music like Dr. P or sheer will like Christina, or even numbers like the twins, how then do we end up with these specific, often destructive narratives? Like, my addiction is my friend, or this vice is a necessary part of who I am. How do these self-sabotaging stories take root so deeply and become so compelling?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And Leon Festinger's seminal theory of cognitive dissonance provides a truly powerful explanation for this phenomenon.
Cognitive dissonance. Okay, refresh us on that.
At its core, we humans fundamentally strive for consistency. We want consistency among our beliefs, our opinions, and our behaviors.
We like things to line up.
Exactly. When there's an inconsistency, for example, knowing something is harmful or undesirable but continuing to do it anyway, it creates a state of profound psychological discomfort, dissonance.
That uncomfortable feeling when things don't match.
Precisely. Our minds simply do not like that feeling, and they will work tirelessly, often unconsciously, to resolve it.
And to reduce that discomfort, our minds basically become expert spin doctors.
Right.
They start performing these mental gymnastics to make things feel consistent again.
That's a great way to put it, spin doctors. We often achieve this resolution by actively emphasizing the positives of the chosen alternative, in this case, the vice.
Focusing on the perceived benefits.
Yes, and simultaneously minimizing or rationalizing away the negatives of the rejected alternative, which would be healthier choices, or acknowledging the actual harm being done. This creates a powerful, often self-deceiving narrative.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine someone who smokes. They're likely fully aware of the severe health risks, but internally they might justify it by saying, well, it helps me relax, or it's my only pleasure after a long day, or my grandfather smoked till he was 90.
Right, downplaying the risk.
Exactly. While actively ignoring or downplaying the severe health risks they know exist, this mental maneuver effectively freezes motivations after a choice is made, making it incredibly hard to change course later. The very act of choosing the vice, even repeatedly, becomes a kind of commitment that the mind then feels compelled to defend, building a stronger and stronger narrative around it to reduce that internal conflict.
So we're not just passively doing this. We actively seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Confirmation bias.
And we subtly, or maybe even overtly, avoid anything that might challenge that comforting, albeit false, narrative. We really build a fortress of self-justification around the vice, don't we?
You've hit on a critical point there. This phenomenon, known as confirmation bias, profoundly strengthens the vice as a friend story. It makes it very difficult for contradictory facts, new information, or even direct negative experiences like health scares or relationship problems caused by the vice to penetrate that fortified narrative.
The walls are too high.
They become very high. Festinger himself noted how individuals facing public health campaigns related to their behavior, like smoking warnings, tend to actively avoid or reinterpret the information that would highlight the dangers. They do this precisely to maintain that internal consistency, to protect the narrative.
And social groups play into this too, right?
Oh, hugely. Individuals often seek confirmation of their beliefs and justifications from others who share similar behaviors. See, everyone does it, or my friends understand. This further solidifies the dissonant cognition and makes the false narrative feel even more real, more accepted, more normal.
Okay, so there's the mental justification piece. But beyond just these elaborate mental gymnastics and narrative building, there's also an incredibly powerful behavioral component at play, is there? It's not just what we tell ourselves, but what our bodies and our habits learn on a very fundamental level.
Most certainly. You can't separate the mind and the behavior here. Ivan Pavlov's groundbreaking work on conditioned reflexes, way back, showed us how neutral stimuli can become deeply ingrained signals for automatic, often unconscious reactions.
The dogs and the bell.
Exactly. These neural pathways, once established through repeated pairing stimulus and response can become exceedingly persistent and remarkably resistant to change, even after hundreds of repetitions over long periods.
So the brain learns the association very strongly.
Very strongly. Think about his famous dogs salivating at the sound of a metronome or a bell, even when no food was present. Their brains created an expectation and an automatic physiological and behavioral response. Now, translate that to addiction. Specific environments, like a particular bar, or even just being alone at home, certain times of day, after work, late at night, particular emotions, stress, boredom, anxiety, celebration, even specific people.
All these can become cues.
Powerful cues. They trigger an automatic craving or the impulse to engage in the vice, often bypassing conscious thought almost entirely.
So if a particular environment or emotion has been repeatedly paired with a vice, say, habitually coming home after a stressful day and immediately reaching for a drink, or scrolling endlessly on your phone the minute you feel a twinge of boredom, that vice becomes an almost automatic response, like Pavlov's dogs salivating at the sound of the metronome. The external cue, or the internal feeling, triggers the craving and the behavior, with much conscious decision-making involved.
Precisely. It becomes a deeply ingrained habit. And B.F. Skinner further expanded on this with his work on operant conditioning. He explained how positive reinforcers, things that provide immediate reward.
Like the pleasure or relief from the vice.
Exactly.
Correct.
Like the immediate, perhaps intense pleasure or relief derived from a substance or a behavior, these can profoundly drive actions, even if that behavior has no inherent survival value and, in fact, leads to significant long-term harm.
The short-term reward wins out.
It often does. These anomalous effects, as Skinner called them, create incredibly powerful immediate reward loops in the brain. These loops can easily override consideration of long-term negative consequences, making the vice as a friend feel incredibly compelling in the short run. The short-term gratification is so potent that it overshadows any potential future pain, effectively locking the behavior into place.
And Skinner emphasized the environment too, didn't he?
He did. He stressed that much of our behavior is determined by our environment. And crucially, he noted that a culture is, in large part, an environment largely of his own making, meaning our societal choices and our personal choices actively shape these reinforcing loops around us.
And Albert Bandura's social learning theory reminds us again that we don't exist in a vacuum. We learn by watching others.
Absolutely. We imitate behaviors and narratives from observing our social groups. If our immediate environment, our family, our friends, our workplace culture normalizes certain self-destructive patterns or frames of vice as a common, acceptable coping mechanism,
Everyone blows off steam this way.
exactly, then those stories become even more deeply entrenched in our own minds. We learn not just what to do, but how to justify it and talk about it from those around us. This further solidifies the vice's role as a perceived friend or necessary tool.
Okay, so beyond mere habit and conditioning, you mentioned attachment earlier, there's often a profound and deeply emotional sense of attachment to the vice itself, like it's a relationship.
It can feel very much like that. Amir Levine and Rachel Heller's work on attachment styles, while typically applied to romantic relationships, offers a really fascinating and, I think, illuminating lens here.
How so?
Think about the characteristics of insecure attachment. The yearning for closeness, the feeling of incompleteness or anxiety when separated from the attachment figure, or the sense of being too emotionally connected to the other person to leave, despite knowing intellectually that the relationship isn't healthy or good for you.
That sounds disturbingly familiar in the context of addiction.
It does, doesn't it? These feelings strikingly mirror the powerful grip of addiction for many people. It's as if the vice itself becomes an attachment figure. It provides a perverse form of intimacy, perhaps security, or even a twisted sense of belonging that is perceived as always available, always there, unlike maybe people in their lives.
It's truly unsettling to consider that a vice could offer that kind of perverse security or availability, that it becomes the only thing that consistently shows up for a person, however destructive that presence might ultimately be.
And Bessel van der Kolk's extensive work on trauma deepens this understanding significantly. He illustrates how some individuals, often those with histories of trauma, can cling to self-destructive patterns.
As a way of coping.
Sometimes as a way of coping, sometimes almost as a way of staying connected to the trauma itself. He describes a patient, Tom, who felt he had to remain loyal to the dead by needing to be a living memorial to fallen comrades from war. This manifested in self-destructive behaviors.
Uh,
So the vice as a friend can sometimes be a profoundly misguided self-protective narrative, albeit ultimately destructive. It can be woven from deep psychological needs, from past wounds, from a desperate attempt to maintain a sense of connection or control, or even identity in the face of trauma or overwhelming pain.
and Ernest Becker, you mentioned him again.
Mhm.
He would call this the lie of his character, right? These intricate defenses and self-deceptions.
Exactly. They become a lifelong trap, a conditioned prison, as he put it. And paradoxically, this prison can give a false sense of prison heroism or control. We become comfortable, maybe even a bit smug, in our limited routines and justifications,
Because the alternative is scarier.
because we're terrified of what Becker called parole into the wide world of chance. The unknown, the vulnerability of genuine living, often feels far more terrifying than the familiar suffering of the prison, even if that familiar prison is slowly destroying us.
Okay, so to try and understand this profound internal conflict where we consciously know one thing, we know the vice is harmful, but our actions tell a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Haidt's rider and elephant metaphor seems incredibly relevant here.
Oh, it's incredibly apt. So hate pictures the mind like a rider sitting atop a giant elephant. Your conscious, rational rider, the part of you that thinks logically, makes plans, understands consequences.
That's the part that knows the vice is bad.
Right. That part might clearly understand that the vice is harmful, that the friend is actually an enemy. But the elephant, this represents your automatic processes, your powerful gut feelings, your deeply ingrained intuitions, emotions, and habits. The elephant is often the one truly driving the behavior. And the elephant is huge and powerful.
And the elephant often makes decisions before the rider even knows what's happening.
Often, yes, or it just goes where it wants to go, regardless of the rider's intentions. And the rider, in this scenario, often exists not really to control the elephant.
But to justify where the elephant is going.
Exactly. The rider serves the elephant, making up post hoc justifications for its actions. Haidt vividly calls this moral dumbfounding, where we have strong gut feelings or intuitions, the elephant, and our rational mind, the rider, scrambles to come up with logical-sounding reasons afterwards, even if those reasons don't fully hold up.
The rider is like the elephant's press secretary.
That's a perfect analogy. The rider is the press secretary, constantly spinning the elephant's actions in the best possible light. This dynamic makes genuine change incredibly difficult.
Because you're arguing with the press secretary, not the elephant itself.
Precisely. The rational mind is constantly trying to justify the emotional impulses and the established habits, rather than truly challenging them at their root. Haidt notes, interestingly, that without emotional input from the elephant, decision-making becomes almost paralyzed. Like trying to pick a washing machine based purely on specs, every option feels equally good or bad, leading to foolish or no decisions at all.
So we need the elephant, but it can lead us astray.
We absolutely need the elephant. But this highlights how powerfully our emotions and automatic processes, even misguided ones, shape our stories and our actions, often despite what our logical writer clearly tells us. The writer might genuinely want to go one way, towards health and freedom, but the elephant is powerfully heading in another direction, towards the familiar comfort or relief of the vice. And often, the writer just goes along for the ride, dutifully making up a plausible story about why that was the plan all along.
Okay, so if these narratives, these vice's friend stories, are so deeply embedded, fortified by cognitive dissonance, reinforced by behavioral conditioning, clung to through deep emotional attachments, and driven by this powerful elephant of our unconscious impulses.
It's a potent combination.
It really is.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to deconstruct them? How do you challenge a friend that your mind has, maybe for years, painstakingly created and protected?
Yeah.
Where do you even start?
It requires immense courage. As Ernest Becker would unequivocally state, it takes courage to truly realize the truth of your situation, to see the lie of your character, as he called it, the false narrative you've constructed.
To see the prison walls.
Exactly. And then to actively work to dispel that lie. It's about breaking free from that conditioned prison of defenses. And echoing Shakespeare's King Lear in The Storm, it's metaphorically about throwing off all your cultural endings, all the borrowed justifications and societal norms to stand naked, as it were, in the storm of life.
That sounds terrifying.
It is terrifying. It's a profoundly vulnerable state because it means consciously confronting the anxiety, the discomfort, the existential dread, perhaps, that the lie, the narrative, was originally designed to protect you from in the first place. But it is absolutely necessary for any genuine, lasting change to occur. You have to face the fear.
Jordan Peterson talks about this too, doesn't he? This idea of confronting chaos.
He does. He often calls this a heroic exploratory tendency, that essential human drive to confront the unknown, to willingly step into the unbearable present, as he might put it, and face the chaos, face the dragon, with the hope, the faith perhaps, of reorganizing it and finding a path towards potential redemption and a deeper self-consciousness. It's a journey into uncharted territory, both inside yourself and in your life.
And Viktor Frankl's experiences. I mean, talk about confronting the unbearable.
His experiences in Nazi concentration camps underscore this concept in the most extreme and harrowing way imaginable. He observed, even amidst unimaginable suffering, the fierce internal struggles some individuals wage just to maintain personal dignity, a sense of self.
To hold on to who they were.
To find meaning, however small, even in such extreme circumstances, was absolutely crucial. This internal battle, he argued, was fundamental to avoid becoming merely a part of a mass, losing one's personal values and allowing existence to descend to a purely animalistic level. This internal struggle to maintain a narrative of individual worth, purpose, and agency, even when all external factors conspire against it, is truly fundamental. It shows the enduring power of the human spirit to choose its response, its attitude, and in doing so, to write its own meaning, even in the face of death.
So that internal choice, that assertion of self, is key to deconstruction.
It's the starting point. And to confront these narratives effectively, it's clear we first need to truly observe them, especially our immediate emotional responses. But observe without immediately reacting, without getting swept away by them.
Just notice them.
Just notice. Daniel Goleman's extensive work on emotional intelligence is absolutely key here. Understanding how our amygdala, the brain's rapid response emotional center, the alarm system, how it can sometimes take control before our neocortex, our thinking, rational brain, has even had a chance to fully process a situation. This leads to what he calls emotional hijackings.
Like snapping at someone or grabbing that drink before you even think.
Exactly. Those impassioned actions that we later regret. Understanding this mechanism is crucial for developing self-awareness. These moments are some of the fundamental mind's tricks that Sachs alluded to, where our emotional brain overrides our rational thought. We need to become acutely aware of these hijackings as they happen, or even as the impulse arises, to create even a tiny pause between impulse and action.
And Bessel van der Kolk, back to him, he emphasizes the vital importance of acknowledging and accepting our true feelings, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Even if they seem irrational or uncomfortable.
Yes, very strongly. He talks about patients caught in cycles of self-blame, maybe for past trauma or current behaviors, and how trying to simply talk yourself into being more reasonable, trying to rationalize away the feelings, often only makes you feel more lonely and isolated within your own mind.
Because you're invalidating your own experience.
Precisely. Compassionate self-observation means validating your feelings. Understanding why they are there, perhaps as old survival strategies, even if they're maladaptive now. It means making space for them, hearing what they have to say, even if they seem illogical from your current perspective. It's not about judging your feelings as good or bad, right or wrong, but simply acknowledging their presence and maybe their history.
Okay, so this brings us back to Oliver Sacks's approach, his personalistic science.
It really does. His call for a personalistic or romantic science isn't just a methodology for neurologists studying patients with rare conditions. It's actually a powerful and deeply insightful model for you to apply to your own life, your own internal experience.
Becoming your own romantic scientist.
Exactly. It means approaching your unique internal world, your thoughts, your feelings, your habitual narratives, with the same intense curiosity, meticulous detail, and crucially, the same lack of immediate judgment that a good scientist would bring to studying a novel phenomenon. Observe your mind's tricks, your narratives, your patterns of thought and emotion, without immediately trying to change them, suppress them, or criticize yourself for having them. Just notice what's happening inside as an objective yet deeply compassionate observer of your own experience.
That's a really helpful image, becoming your own internal scientist. It's almost like Pavlov, you mentioned him needing to simplify experimental conditions to eliminate extraneous stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
Metaphorically, maybe this means creating a clear internal space for self-reflection, free from external noise and distractions, maybe turning off the phone for a bit,
Absolutely, creating that space.
to truly understand the cause and effect of your own thoughts and feelings, and to identify the triggers for those old ingrained narratives. You're essentially setting up your own inner laboratory, an observatory of your own mind.
Beautifully put, an observatory of the mind. And in a powerful Jungian sense, this process of self-observation and eventually integration is about bravely accepting the snake.
The snake.
Jung used the snake as a metaphor for the confronting, often terrifying aspects of your unconscious, your shadow self, your difficult experiences, the parts of you you'd rather not look at. Accepting the snake means seeing it not as purely evil or something to be destroyed, but as a necessary part of the process of growth.
So embracing the difficult parts.
Embracing them, or at least acknowledging their reality and their power, it leads to a profound shift in perspective. Moving away from feeling like the ego, your conscious self, is the absolute center of everything.
Like the writer thinking he's fully in charge.
Exactly. Moving from that to the realization that, as Jung put it, the ego was not the center, but following a universal law, I circled around a sun. There are larger forces at play within you.
So it's not all about willpower or personal failing.
Not entirely. This perspective shift moves you away from harsh self-blame, from feeling like everything is your fault or a personal failing. And it moves you toward an understanding of larger internal psychological processes, archetypal patterns, maybe even the echoes of past experiences. It allows you to begin integrating those difficult parts of yourself, those perceived enemies within, rather than constantly fighting against them. And paradoxically, that acceptance is often what transforms what was once a perceived threat into a path for deeper understanding, wholeness, and genuine growth.
Okay, so let's say we've done some of that hard work. We've bravely observed these old, often destructive narratives. We've acknowledged them with curiosity and maybe some compassion. We understand a bit more about the deep psychological and behavioral roots that sustained them.
A crucial phase.
Now what? How do we actively begin to write a new, healthier story for ourselves? How do we become the conscious, deliberate author of our own unfolding narrative, choosing, new friends instead of the old ones?
This is where the constructive work really begins. And Carol Dweck's groundbreaking work on mindset is absolutely fundamental here. It's the bedrock.
Fixed versus growth mindset.
Exactly. You must first consciously cultivate a shift away from what she calls a fixed mindset. That's the belief that your abilities, your intelligence, even your capacity for change are static, unchangeable traits.
Like I am what I am. I can't change.
Right, or blaming external factors constantly, or thinking self-deprecating thoughts like, I am the stupidest, or I'm just wired this way, this is just how I cope. You have to move towards a growth mindset, which is the belief that your capabilities, including your ability to change, to learn new coping mechanisms, to recover from addiction, or any significant life challenge, can actually be developed and enhanced through sustained effort, through dedication, through learning and trying new strategies.
So change is possible with effort.
Yes. This shift provides a genuine roadmap to future success, as Dweck puts it, because it fundamentally opens up the possibility of improvement and personal agency. Without that underlying belief, any effort towards change will likely feel futile and you'll give up easily.
That really makes sense. The belief in your capacity for change has to be the engine driving it. Volley 6 at Mahali, the flow guy, he had that great piece of advice. Reform yourself. That way there will be one less rascal in the world.
Chuckles. I love that quote. It perfectly encapsulates this idea of individual agency and the power of self-directed change. It's about taking personal responsibility, not in a blaming way, but in an empowering way, for that internal narrative and actively working to change it. Knowing that this internal work, this self-reformation, actually has positive external ripples.
You're not just doing it for yourself.
In a way, no. Your change contributes positively. Now, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs also helps us understand a crucial shift in motivation that often occurs when we commit to writing this new, healthier story.
How does Maslow fit in?
We need to consciously move away from what he termed deficiency motivation. This is often what addiction or the vice attempts to satisfy, seeking to fill a perceived void, address a lack, alleviate discomfort or anxiety. It's motivated by what's missing.
Trying to fill a hole.
Exactly. We need to shift towards growth motivation. This involves living what Maslow called a self-actualizing life, a life that is inherently self-fulfilling, value-enjoying, and self-perfecting. It's conceived as an unfolding from within, focusing on becoming more fully yourself, expressing your potential, rather than constantly striving for something external to compensate for an internal lack.
So moving from fixing deficits to pursuing growth and meaning.
Precisely. And the philosopher William James, he noted that consciousness itself is inherently a fighter for ends. It's constantly creating real ends, purposes, goals for itself.
You need something to strive for.
It does. The challenge, then, in writing a new narrative is to consciously redirect this powerful, inherent conscious effort, this fundamental drive towards new, healthier purposes, meanings, and goals. Instead of allowing it to default back to the old destructive patterns and the false goals offered by the vice, it's about consciously giving your consciousness new battles to fight, new worthwhile mountains to climb.
Okay, so that's the mindset and motivation shift. What about practical steps? How do we actually build this new story day to day?
Right, the how. James Clear's incredibly influential work in Atomic Habits provides really concrete, actionable tools for this process of narrative rewriting through behavioral change, because ultimately the story changes as the actions change.
What kind of tools?
He suggests things like habit stacking. This means building new desired behaviors by linking them directly to existing well-established habits. For example, you might decide, after I make my morning coffee existing habit, I will meditate for 5 minutes, new habit, or after I finish dinner existing habit, I will call a supportive friend new habit instead of isolating myself old habit.
Piggybacking on existing routines.
Exactly. You can also consciously design your environment. Make cues for the good habits obvious and visible. Put your running shoes by the door, leave a book on your pillow instead of your phone, and make cues for the old destructive habits invisible or difficult to access. Delete the apps, don't keep junk food in the house, change your route home to avoid the bar.
Make the healthy choice the easy choice.
Make it the path of least resistance. Clear also stresses the profound importance of joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior.
Finding your tribe.
Finding the right tribe. This is absolutely critical for recovery and for crafting a new, authentic narrative. It means actively replacing old social contexts, relationships, and environments that maybe reinforce the vices of friends story with new communities and relationships that genuinely support your healthier narrative and your emerging values. Our deepest desires include the desire to belong, right? And we instinctively imitate the behaviors and indeed the narratives of our chosen groups. So choose wisely.
That makes sense. And what about reinforcement? Rewarding yourself?
Crucial. Building on that, both B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura highlight the immense power of positive reinforcement. And specifically, Bandura emphasized self-managed reinforcement.
Meaning you reward yourself.
Yes, actively recognizing and rewarding your own progress, no matter how small or incremental it might seem. Bandura pointed out that this personal control through self-reinforcement is vital. It can succeed in changing behavior even when external environmental inducements or pressures alone fail. It's about becoming your own most effective coach and cheerleader, acknowledging your efforts, celebrating your small victories, maybe journaling them, telling someone supportive. This reinforces the new behavior and the new self-narrative of, I am someone who can do this.
So setting new conscious goals seems absolutely essential then, to guide this whole process, to give direction to that fighter for ends.
Definitely. Csikszentmihalyi confirms this. He found that consciously chosen goals provide a profound sense of control and purpose, even acknowledging that much of our behavior might be driven by unconscious forces. This sense of agency, this feeling of being in charge of your direction and your destiny, is incredibly motivating for recovery and for continuing to build a better life.
What happens without goals?
Without clear, compelling goals, our attention can easily drift, our efforts can dissipate into chaos, and those old, familiar narratives can easily reassert their dominance when things get tough. Goals give us a map for our unfolding story. They provide structure.
And Viktor Frankl, back to man's search for meaning, he powerfully reminds us that finding a deep and abiding meaning in life is central.
Absolutely central. Whether that meaning is found through love, through creative work, through service to others, or even through finding purpose and dignity in suffering itself, finding your meaning is a central pillar for navigating hardship and building a new, resilient identity. It's about choosing what to value most deeply and pursuing it fiercely. This provides a powerful antidote to the emptiness or meaninglessness that a vice often attempts unsuccessfully to fill.
And Jordan Peterson talks about constructing models of the future.
Yes. He describes the importance of constructing models of the desired future that are not just vague aspirations, but are reasonable, achievable, and grounded in biological necessity and your own past experiences of what has brought genuine satisfaction. This allows the actual attainment of these new goals to adopt an emotional aspect of value, as he puts it. It makes a pursuit feel worthwhile on a gut level. This replaces the false, temporary value that was once attributed to the vice. It gives you a new, authentic sun to circle in that Jungian sense. A true north for your life's unfolding story, providing genuine meaning and purpose.
Okay, so to bring all of these powerful insights together into maybe a coherent path forward, Bessel van der Kolk outlines a clear and practical approach. He talks about reestablishing ownership of your body and your mind, which he powerfully calls self-leadership.
Yes, self-leadership is a great term.
It really is about embodying your new, healthier story and taking charge of your internal world, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And his 4 key steps for cultivating this crucial self-leadership are really practical anchors.
What are they?
First, finding a way to become calm and focused. This is foundational. It's about actively learning to regulate your internal state, your anxiety, your agitation, your racing thoughts, which is often the first casualty when you're caught in old, overwhelming narratives, cravings, or emotional triggers.
I don't get either.
Techniques like mindfulness, focused meditation, simple diaphragmatic breathing exercises, even things like yoga or neurofeedback, which is a way to train your brain activity in real time, can be crucial here. The goal is to help you regain a sense of internal control and centeredness.
Okay, calm and focused. What's next?
Second, learning to maintain that calm in response to reminders of the past. This is about building genuine resilience against triggers, whether those triggers are external images, sounds, places, people, or internal thoughts, memories, physical sensations. It's about learning to process them without becoming overwhelmed, emotionally hijacked, or automatically reverting to old coping behaviors. It's about creating that vital space between the stimulus and your response.
Building tolerance for discomfort.
In a way, yes. Building the capacity to stay present with difficulty without reacting automatically. Third, finding a way to be fully alive in the present and engaged with people around you. This means actively breaking free from the constant preoccupation with the past or the future anxiety or the pull of the vice, and instead intentionally engaging with reality, with your surroundings, with genuine connections right here, right now. It's about bringing your full self, your attention to your current life.
Showing up fully.
Showing up fully. And fourth, perhaps the most challenging, not having to keep secrets from yourself. This is about cultivating radical honesty. Being truthful about your experiences, including your past struggles, your vulnerabilities, maybe even the ways you survived that weren't ideal, but without shame or the need to hide parts of yourself away. This allows for genuine integration of your entire self rather than keeping things compartmentalized, which is what keeps old narratives alive and powerful in the shadows.
Wow. Those are significant steps.
They are, but taken together, these steps help you integrate the multiple realities that might exist within you, your past and present, maybe your child feelings and your adult rational mind, your logical thoughts and your strong emotions. They help you form a coherent, authentic self. And as Howard Gardner reminds us, your sense of self is fundamentally an account, a story that you continually edit as you grow and change.
So the story is never truly fixed.
Never fully written.
Yeah.
You are its ongoing author, always capable of revision.
So we've really covered a lot of ground. We've explored how Oliver Sacks, through his deeply human case studies, showed us the profound plasticity of the self, how our brains are constantly making sense of our world through these complex, sometimes surprisingly fabricated narratives.
Constantly weaving that enchanted loom.
Exactly. And we've seen how those narratives, particularly when they get centered around a vice or a deeply ingrained habit, can sometimes trap us, leading us to tragically mistake a destructive pattern for a friend, or even an essential part of who we believe we are.
Indeed. We've seen how powerful forces cognitive dissonance, keeping things consistent, deeply ingrained behavioral conditioning, making things automatic, even our fundamental attachment needs seeking connection, how all these can make a vice feel like an indispensable friend, creating what Ernest Becker called that powerful lie of character, which feels paradoxically like a protective prism.
But there's hope here.
There's absolutely hope. That's the crucial message. The truly good news, and I think the core takeaway from this whole deep dive, is that with conscious self-awareness, with profound compassion for yourself and your struggles, with a resilient growth mindset, believing change is possible, and with deliberate, consistent effort, you possess the incredible inherent capacity to deconstruct those old limiting stories.
We could take them apart.
We can, and then consciously, deliberately write a truer, healthier, and more authentic narrative for your life.
It's an incredibly powerful idea, isn't it? That you are the author of your own evolving story. You're that living carpet, as Rebecca said, always needing a new design, a new pattern to feel whole and composed.
You hold the pen.
So, as you go about your day, after hearing all this, we invite you, the listener, to maybe ask yourself, what new pattern or design will you deliberately choose to weave for your living carpet today, even just in this next moment? And what new friends, what healthier, more authentic narratives, what genuine connections, what truly meaningful purposes will you choose to welcome into that unfolding, always being written story of yours?
It's about consciously choosing the story you want to live.
Think about the narrative you want to live and then take one small step, weave one small thread towards embodying it.